Never before has there been a machine that has evolved at a quicker rate in the last 25 years than the personal computer. The personal computer snuck into our lives disguised as an innovative typewriter and is now crucial to how we function in our daily routines, both professionally and personally. But who is master and who is slave? Part 1. History of the computer and the public sphere. Computers have been used to coordinate information between multiple locations since the 1950s. In time, the network spread beyond academic and military institutions and became known as the Internet. The emergence of networking involved a redefinition of the nature and boundaries of the computer. In the early 1980s, a PC was a machine that acted like an IBM PC, meaning literally personal computer, produced by IBM in 1981. The personal computer came about when the cost and dimensions were reduced to a size where it was possible to be sold to a wide range of consumers. Before this, computers were mainly produced for numerical purposes. That was when computers started to go mainstream and appeared in richer homes across the United States. In 1995, less than 18 million adults partook in online activity. Today, it is 184 million people. The Internet pushed social boundaries and created a new meaning for Habermas's the public sphere and put it online. By understanding the public sphere, we are able to appreciate the beginning of the personal computer and its evolution, as it is now such an enormous part of our daily lives. When you think of the public sphere, we think of a place where people gather to have discourses on a variety of topics they feel need to be addressed. According to Boder, it is a discursive place where individuals and groups congregate to discuss matters of mutual interest and, where possible, to reach common judgment. Change is only achieved if it is communicated with others, and the Internet has allowed that to happen like no other tool prior to the 21st century media age. Physical proximity is no longer an issue, as the Internet has allowed the public sphere to go global. We are no longer forced to be with someone because of geography, but out of shared common interest.
Part 2. Subculture and Surveillance. With a few clicks of a button, you have access to millions of websites dedicated to online discourse and subjects to tickle anyone's fancy. That is the beauty of the public sphere online. As the possibilities are endless, anyone can talk to whoever they want, whenever they want. There are countless website forums and social networking sites dedicated to encouraging discussion. This accessibility has created online subcultures that anyone with internet access can partake in. Subculture has been defined by cultural theorist Hebdige as a system of oppositional codes that offend the majority, threaten the status quo, and contradict the myth of consensus suggested by dominant codes. This definition is a traditional view, and in contemporary society, the definition of subculture needs to be expanded. Subcultures that have been created online do not necessarily attempt to offend the majority or threaten the status quo. They exist so members of society with marginalized interests are able to connect with like-minded individuals. One of the defining characteristics of subculture is the rejection of the mainstream. Once a trend becomes mainstream, it is no longer considered subculture. However, because the internet is so widespread, subcultures ebb and flow in the mainstream online community without being recognized in other areas of society. Participating in these subcultures provides people with a sense of community and acceptance that they may struggle to find elsewhere. Although this is beneficial, it can also create a false sense of familiarity, or as Horton and Wohl describe, the illusion of intimacy. Although they discuss this phrase as a media relationship in terms of television and radio effects on audiences, it can also be applied to the internet. This illusion of intimacy refers to the relationship between media and audiences, or in the case of the internet, the relationship between individual members of online communities and social networks. For members of subcultures, to feel connected with others who have similar interests gives a sense of belonging, even when that community is online. On the flip side, people often misrepresent themselves online and may develop relationships with other members which are unrealistic and fake. This may result in dangerous circumstances, or at the very least, unhealthy and disappointing relationships. There are many different types of online subcultures, some of which are hardly subcultures at all. Rather, they are modern cultural shifts that most members of society take part in and will eventually be accepted as everyday aspects of modern life. For example, according to a Flowtown poll, 61% of adults use social networking websites, with 38% using every day, and the amount of time that children spend on the computer has more than tripled since 1999. This makes social networking hardly unconventional, but the specific networks that people belong to may have subcultural aspects. Another way to look at the effect that the internet has had on society comes from Zenstrom and Fries, the co-founders of Skype, whose goal was to be disruptive in the cause of making the world a better place. This is a modern take on traditional subculture, because previously, rather than improving society, subcultures had opposed the mainstream, and in particular, attempted to resist authoritative surveillance. Through the internet, surveillance has become mainstream, and perhaps most disturbing, the majority of this surveillance is self-governed because people willingly post personal information online. This is a perfect example of hegemony in effect. People eagerly post every detail of their lives online, under the false belief that only those they allow will have access. Strangelove says that in reality, everything you say online is remembered, recorded, and used by third parties, with that data remaining in someone else's hand. This constant surveillance was originally used to make us behave as we should, the idea being that if people were unsure whether they were being recorded, they were more likely to act altruistically. However, this surveillance, especially online, is now exploited to collect personal information to be used for the financial gain of companies and corporations. Is this not extremely frightening and an abuse of power, not to mention a violation of our rights to privacy? For those using Facebook, MySpace, and other networking places, here's some food for thought. Are you really the one in control? Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook's argument for radical transparency, has been criticized, but realistically, it is not much different from the idea of compulsory visibility that people rarely question. Foucault describes discipline and power as the result of compulsory visibility, because power is gained by those who have information, and in the case of the internet, information is easily accessible to everyone. Has this created an Orwellian-like dystopia, where Big Brother is always watching? Or as Foucault suggests, rather than there being one Big Brother, we all play the role of Big Brother, in which individuals watch over themselves and each other in a state of 24-hour surveillance. Though we may have been spared the futuristic dystopian of 1984 and the all-powerful Big Brother's control over us, everywhere we go, everything we do, computers exercise surveillance, and someone knows virtually everything there is to know about us.
Part 3. Internet Dependence and Cultivation Theory. As you can see, we rely heavily on the internet for surveillance, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have become dependent on the internet in every facet of our being. We use it to conduct business, to have a social life, to complete work for school. It's necessary. In business, technology such as the internet is a driving force towards globalization. Imagine being able to coordinate businesses across oceans and expand your company overseas, but still be able to run it from your local office. The internet aided and eased that possibility. Businesses improved their global competitiveness and productivity with more efficient electronic transaction processing and instant access to information. Even with something like telecommuting, that really changed the work environment of many businesses around the world. Everyone's social life has now been transferred from predominantly in person to online. With the emergence of social networking sites like Facebook and Twitter, the amount of adults socializing online has gone up 27% since 2005. People all over the world are updating their statuses from home, work, and their cell phones to keep all of their online friends in the loop about their every move. Finally, for school, the internet has become the norm. The days of searching through library books are over thanks to online sites and journals. Many professors even have you submit homework online. Basically, there's no part of our life the internet does not touch. With all of the benefits of this technology, there are bound to be a few hiccups. Those hiccups are displayed in cultivation theory. Gerbner focused mainly on the media, predominantly television, encroaching into our everyday lives because it is such an important source of information and entertainment. He called this cultivation theory. This developed dependence with television has grown worse with the rise of the internet. Information can now be shared from any corner of the globe to, well, anywhere. We're becoming more dependent on this tool, and it's changing us, fundamentally speaking, in every aspect of our lives, but most noticeably how we socialize and interact with each other and function at the most basic levels, like our memory. Some argue that the internet is becoming the central medium where everything is all interconnected. The more time spent online, researching and surfing may be seen as a blessing, but also a curse. Yes, things are easier to access. The entire world is essentially at the tip of your fingers, a few clicks away. But because of all this accessibility and general easiness, it is modifying who we are and how we think and act. The generation growing up right now in the world of the internet is experiencing so much more of their social lives without face-to-face interaction that there is a possibility that their social skills will be seriously flawed. People get so comfortable behind the security of a keyboard that facing people in person can be intimidating. This obviously has not been tested since the upcoming generation has not been exposed long enough to determine the long-term effects. However, several studies are being conducted to determine the true risk of the technologically dependent society in which we live. That is not all. We no longer have the attention span or desire we once had before all this information was so accessible. Carr says the more we use the web, the more we have to fight to stay focused. In the 20th century, electronic media are supporting an equally profound transformation of cultural identity. Poster states that telephone, radio, film, television, the computer, and now their integration as multimedia reconfigure words, sounds, and images so as to cultivate new configurations of individuality. So what would happen if the internet was taken away? What would happen to our world? It would be anarchy. Look at the recent crisis in Egypt that's happened. They pulled the internet kill switch and everything just stopped. It was so easy for the government to try and stop the flow of information, and the people were not happy.
Part 4. Computers are here to stay. The internet has created subcultures that are more easily accessible than anything before. It has also redefined subculture because people are no longer limited by geography in order to be a part of it. Social networks are in and of themselves like mini subcultures that people create and belong to with their friends and family. Constant surveillance and compulsory visibility have resulted through the widespread usage of the internet. Computers track and record every move that an individual makes, allowing this information to be easily accessed by third parties. There are two ways of looking at this. One is that this information can be sold for financial gain, the other being that it keeps people from acting inappropriately.
The internet has become deeply involved in our lives and has invaded the world on every level. We simply cannot escape it. The internet is slowly changing the terminology we use, the things we talk about, and even the way we communicate with each other in person. Although many things are not certain, one is. The internet will keep growing. It will develop to accommodate whatever we want, created by the people, for the people. And it will continue to change the way humanity relates and communicates to each other. To what end? No one knows.
To say that technology dependency is inevitable is an understatement. Personal computers are very influential in our lives as a society and help us discover and develop new ideas. They also take us to another place to forget our daily worries, if only for a few hours, and help us stay connected to those around us. Far from being abandoned, the computer is here to stay and has no intention of going anywhere.